One. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining me on this discussion panel. Very happy to have you guys on board today. How about a quick round introduction? Let's start with
Sure,
Malcolm.
Tree. Hi, I'm Malcolm. I'm from Accenture. I lead our technology strategy practice. I'm based in Hong Kong, but I look after Greater China business in region.
And hi, everyone. My name is Justin Baird. So I'm also at Accenture. So I'm a managing director of R&D, technology, and innovation here in APAC.
Right, I'm Gerd Leonhardt, futurist. I'm based in Zurich, Switzerland, and I just wrote a book called Technology versus Humanity, which talks about AI as well.
And I'm Tree. I'm from IDC. I cover artificial intelligence and big data analytics globally as part of my research. So let's dive into some questions, shall we? So when we mention artificial intelligence or AI, is there any significant single keyword that will come to mind for me? Skynet. Malcolm?
Well, I think I'm going to be quite far from Skynet. I would say it's actually human. Why human? Because I think AI is actually all about helping human to do things differently, as well as doing different things eventually. So my choice of word is human.
Very interesting. Thank you. Justin?
I'd actually, for me, I think that artificial intelligence and really kind of the whole area of AI and automation in these things is all about enablement. So enablement to me is the one word because this is really talking about how we can take people that have had repetitive jobs and tasks and this type of thing and take them away from that, enable them to do more interesting things with their work and have more job satisfaction and a happier life.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to pick a word that I made up in my book called Hellven, which is hell and heaven.
Okay.
I think it's a very good word because AI could be both hell or could be heaven. Like any other really evolved technology, it's not neutral until we apply it. Right? And so I think artificial intelligence has the potential to do very, very amazing things. And then it has other potentials which are not so good. And we're going to need to figure out a way to govern it and to guide it. And I think that's the main challenge, really.
So good. Since we're talking about this machinery question, let's stay on this topic. Is there going to be a fear, just like the first industrial revolution in England? Would there be a fear of this? As Justin mentioned, automation. Is it going to take away our jobs? What are some of the fears? What should we be aware of? What's your thoughts?
Well, I think first of all we should forget all the movies that we've seen about AI from Hollywood or China or India. It doesn't really matter because the movies are about entertainment, which means mostly war and things like that. So we should not look at this with fear. At the same time, we cannot have the illusion that it's only just good.
Right.
Like any powerful technology, like nuclear technology, we have to actually find a middle path.
Right.
And I think what's happening with AI, it's quite clear that automation and robotization, virtualization is going to kill a lot of jobs, many, 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 many jobs. And other jobs will be happening on the other side. And some people are saying that basically in 10 years, about 70% of those jobs haven't even been invented yet.
Right.
So I think it's good news and bad news, but we are going to move to a society where jobs will not be what they are today,
Right.
Like the purpose of our lives.
Right.
That's probably going to be 20 years away,
Mm-hmm.
and then that will change the system.
Right. Cool. Justin, to your point about automation, so it seems like it's more of an augmentation, the intelligence augmenting how we do things, how we work, how we do, automate a lot of processes. Your opinion?
Yes, I mean, I think there's some interesting work that's being done in this area where we're kind of looking at, let's say, almost 10 different levels of, let's call it, starting with almost AI as really focusing on simple automation of some tasks, all the way through to systems that are kind of autonomously working. So when we look at kind of like a level 10, like, the most autonomous kind of AI style system, a lot of that's kind of applied to what's happening in like, enterprise today. So we would say a level 10 system is one that analyzes the situation from what it's learned already. So let's say it's gone through machine learning and it's a trained system. And it might be looking at some things and then making a decision itself and then taking care of that without having anybody have any input whatsoever. So it kind of ranges from, let's say, something more simple, which would be a level 1 or 2, which is like, do you want me to do this for you?
Right.
All the way through to like, you might get a report at the end of the day that says there were 25 servers running. 4 of them I turned off because there was no process and it was just burning money. Right? So you just get updated later. So I think when we think of the ways that AI can be used in enterprise, and I'm talking more not the 5 to 10 years, but more like how people are using it, today and for the next couple of years.
Right.
That kind of advantage comes from these type of systems, I guess, being able to, let's call it quote unquote thinking for itself. It's really just
Right.
correlating some things. But that idea of actually having that, I guess we might say what's happening with AI in enterprise kind of now today,
Right.
more than kind of what will, and there's definitely significant impacts about how that affects the workplace and everything in the future.
Right.
If I might just say one thing about the kind of susceptibility of jobs and automation. I think it's quite interesting because there was a Pinnacle study in 2013 done by kind of a proper scientific kind of body of research. They categorized over 600 job categories, and they looked at the susceptibility of the probability of them being automated across that entire list. So the ones that had a very low susceptibility to automation were things like audiologists or like physiotherapists or
Right.
people that are kind of working, even like choreographers, like things like, that take a lot of different type of cognitive ability.
Right.
And then if you look at the other side of the list, things that were very likely to be automated were things like models. So already there's very authentic, human-looking robots out
Right.
there, like Geminoid F, for example, from Osaka University. But then you look at my favorite, which is umpires, referees, and other sports officials. So basically, they're saying that this job that will not exist in the future.
Right.
And if you think about watching the tennis, right, it's just theater.
Right.
Yet the umpire, the line judges, it's just theater, because if they don't trust what the person said, they trust the computer. They say, "Oh, show me," and they zoom all the way in. No one even expects that the computer will ever be out of alignment. They just trust that this is what the call is. So it's interesting to see how these different things will be impacted in even the near future.
Right. So, Malcolm, Justin mentioned about the enterprise space, AI in the enterprise space. What was Accenture's strategy, and how are you guys looking at helping enterprises utilize this new technology?
In fact, in our recent research, we found that compared to 2 years ago, the investment has gone up more than 70%, right, by corporations, large or small. So AI is actually here today, right, and it's going to stay. And if I may put a kind of a simple equation to articulate the value of AI, and this is where I think the first element is around people, as I said, right? So if you don't have people, people don't perform their job well, people don't create, innovate, I think there will not be AI. The second part is the process. So process around the automation we talk about, around the new business model that can be created out of the technology. And the third one is about the data. Right? So you look at it, right? So the people, the human, the process, the data, you say, so what? Okay, we have this for quite some time. That's what we call digital. Well, the interesting thing is AI comes along, right? Where you don't just have these three elements, but now you have a technology that don't just sense, comprehend, and act. It can also learn, right? So the era of AI is really about bringing these three elements together, and you put an exponential power of AI on top of that. And this is where you can really magnify the impact of the people, process, and data, right? So taking organization as an example, and many investment firms are doing algorithmic trading for a long, long time.
Right.
Many companies are trialing virtual agents. Many of my clients already have this. Their clients talking to their chatbots, buying insurance policy and taking advice. So all these are here today. Your kids are talking to Alexa and
Right.
Siri. So this is real, and we do believe that this has a profound impact. And studies shows, right? I mean, we're talking about tens and billions of impact to the enterprise, and I think it's going to stay. And I would suggest that the enterprise will willing to embrace this, and take a leap of faith forward on the subject.
Right. Thank you, Malcolm. Next question for Justin and Gus. I mean, we've seen a lot of acquisitions recently. Google's buying up a lot of the open source TensorFlow. They're buying a lot of technology companies, even Intel, right? We kind of see these acquisitions are becoming more monopolizing. The latest and greatest AI companies, the startup that's come up, they get bought up very quickly. And a lot of this is being moved into the cloud too. Do you see this as a threat, or is this an opportunity? Is this something we should be concerned about, where so much consolidation of this AI IP is being consolidated at these major big corporations? Malcolm?
I think this is interesting, right? So if you look at the trend, and certainly the big platform players, right, are acquiring the AI technologies at very rapid speed. And you look at the future successors, even today, right? Who are you, when people talk about AI, who are you think about, right? People will actually thought about Google, people will thought about Amazon, for example. And this kind of make people start thinking, why are these big players, right, can be so successful in this AI? And it's actually not about AI. We do believe that it's actually about data, right? Because if you don't have the data to train your AI machine, you actually won't get smarter. And this is why you see the kind of the technology and solutions and the data is actually converging. And this is where we see the large platform player actually has a niche because they actually have the data. They can train the machine, right? And you look at the driverless car, you look at what Tesla is doing, it's all about training the algorithms. And now, the Google's model, for example, they can make it all free, right? All free, just like how they make Android free to the people, right? And we're going to have this Google AI running in probably people's pocket, helping them train, right? And enhance the algorithms and gets better. And I think it's quite a different model from say how Amazon and Azure is pursuing. And I think this is all fine, right? But I think the future, I think, if I put my mind on the table, I think it's, these large platform players actually, will actually succeed and qualify. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's in a kind of free market environment. I think as we might have discussed before, I worked at Google for about 6 years, and I saw a number of different acquisitions. It's interesting. I think there's a lot of opportunity in terms of, as you were saying, you're taking some unique opportunities to gain a lot more out of perhaps the data that you already have, right? And I think that we see that happening across different areas. For example, in Accenture, we have an image recognition system that is being used for both commercial and for kind of tech for good kind of processes as well. And what's quite interesting about that is that most of the let's say the problems or like how an image recognition system works and how it learns and how it's trained, these things are known, right? I mean, you look at stuff like open computer vision, these things, most of the things that you want to do if you want to recognize a face in a picture or in a video or whatever, those things are known. What is the core IP comes from how it's been trained and what it's been trained on and the value that system can deliver from that training. And so, as you say, we bring these things together to create kind of like, a gestalt, where the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. Right.
Can I chime in just quickly? I think that it's important to realize that most of the things that we're talking about, they're really about IA, right? Called IA, intelligent assistance. Yeah. And that's 98% of all the good stuff that we're seeing now. And that's the low-hanging fruit for many companies. That's stuff like making the maps better, having better CRM, recognizing people's faces, recognizing their voice. That's all like intelligent stuff that has very little to do with thinking machines, if there's ever actually such a thing. Because the next level would be AI, which means something that happens that the machine kind of creates. Right? And we're seeing a little bit of that, but not much. Most of the other stuff is basically like fancy software, that is kind of intelligent. And I think that is going to be like this for a few years. And then the next step is artificial intelligence and then general intelligence, which would be, for example, the machine that plays the Atari can then also run NATO air traffic control, that sort of thing, right? And that is singularity. The point of singularity is when the machine can actually do things that we easily do. For example, you can have a skill like drive a car, and then he would easily apply it, to driving a motorboat or something that a machine could never do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? And that is completely different. So I think a lot of people are worried about AI also because they think that thinking machines are actually thinking like we do, and that is just not the case. Right? So this is one of the key differentiators. I think for companies, for businesses today, it's about intelligent systems, period. No matter what it is, and that is the first big thing,
Because I want to carry on that point that you just mentioned, treasure trove of data, potential usage for that. And Justin, you mentioned too, Accenture's doing a lot of research too, computer vision, etc. Are you able to share some of the research that Accenture is doing right now in this field, and how is it being applied on the enterprise side? Is there any insights into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, as part of Accenture, we've got, I guess, a few different things in terms of the R&D perspective, and I guess maybe we should start by talking more in the kind of classical R&D kind of side of things. So we have R&D tech labs around the globe, and those R&D tech labs are really kind of focused on the technologies that are going to be impacting business and our environment and everything in the next 5 to 10 years. So they are doing kind of more of the earlier kind of stage experimentation. And look, I mean, the type of work does range in many, many different areas. So one of the kind of, and I guess from there we take these R&D kind of components, and then once they're kind of a tangible opportunity, we can bring those into kind of a next opportunity, which is, I guess, where groups like the Liquid Studios, which is one of the new practices that we're kind of standing up around the region and the world, take that idea of saying, well, here's a proof of concept, here's a client that's interested in working with this type of technology, and then we'll take those ideas and then create a real tangible product opportunity for that client. So fitting into their systems, working with their kind of positioning and all this. So, I mean, there's, I guess, work in different areas. I mean, one of the areas that there's a lot of kind of focus on is in robotics and artificial intelligence. And I guess kind of in this assistant area is the stuff that we see is kind of coming to fold now. So, for example, there's these concepts of, let's say, smart advisors. So a smart advisor is something, for example, you could have that's running kind of in the background on your computer. And instead of like, you know, how if you use Siri or Cortana or something, you go and action it and you say, hey, Siri. This is kind of the opposite of that, which is the assistant goes, hey, you, as in, hey, Justin. Right? So it comes up and it says, one of the things is like, you know, let's say you're developing software. And you submit the software to the repository. That's when the smart assistant comes up and says, okay, let's see what you've done. And it might go, oh, maybe there's some syntax things or whatever it might be. And it'll pop up and say, hey, the code that you just submitted, there's a couple things that you could fix. And then I could say, who else is working on this code? It would tell me the different people that were working on it. There's like, you know, those type of things that we're seeing, those type of assistants come to enterprise as well.
So it's more like a proactive push recommendation system,
so it's
right?
kind of it's seeing what you're doing and assisting you in the process.
Right.
And it's programmed to not say, hey, that was stupid.
It's
We
really
should have
bad
done that
code, yeah.
differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Malcolm, comments?
Yeah, so I think a lot of the research focus is actually from the applied AI, right? So we are not the company that we will invent AlphaGo,
Right.
right? And we are not the company that want to develop the platform like Google and Amazon, right? But what we do is we understand the technology, and because we are very close to our client and the industry and the business, we know the business problem, right? We know what the customers want. And we are able to combine the two together. And this is where a lot of our tech lab, Liquid Studio, innovation lab, focus are. And we have different tiers. So for example, from the incubation front, our venture, right down to tech lab, to our innovation lab, and to our Liquid Studio. So different level of maturity of technologies, with different scale of applicability to our client globally. So that's our research focus.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, because you guys work across all verticals. So any kind of verticals, you will be there looking at how we can solve this problem with the latest.
Absolutely. So take AI as an example. Our research is actually divided across 40 sub-industry verticals.
Wow, okay.
Right. And then, of course, there's a lot of common technologies that can be applicable, but the solutions that we're advising to our client is actually quite industry specific.
Right.
Yeah, because the use cases are different across the 40 sub-industries.
What are the biggest questions you get from your customers? You know, every time you start talking about this topic, you know, they're going to ask you, whether it's another winter AI, or is this really the time to jump in?
I mean, just from my personal experience, I think people are they know that this is happening, and they know that they need to keep on top of these kind of innovations and things. But a lot of times, people are trying to figure out the best ways to apply that. I think a lot of this does come from people hearing a lot about AI, but then kind of maybe not understanding how that AI can be brought into an experience that's beneficial to the customer.
Right.
So, for example, I mean, a good one just kind of more recently, like you see, there's, for example, banks now coming up with Alexa apps and stuff. So you can say, hey, Alexa, what's my balance and, you know, statement, this, that, and the other, right? There's those type of things, right? And what's interesting there is that it's great to have that where it's kind of a hands-free, it's kind of, you know, it's designed for humans rather than having to go and use your QWERTY keyboard or whatever to figure this out. But then it's like there needs to be the right experiences designed around it. So when I know for myself, and I think lots of people, you would say, oh, what's my statement, this, that, or the other. You could say yes or no, it's kind of a conversation. But as soon as you say, oh, well, here's your statement, there's like the system starts rambling off a bunch of numbers. Really what you want is a dashboard that comes along with that. So it's like, you know, you want to have kind of an experience where you are guided and the AI is helping you do these things, but then you actually get the different types of experiences to go along with that. So you get that kind of visual. So I feel like those are the kind of end-to-end experiences that we're trying to focus on and bringing kind of those things to our
Right.
clients. Not just
Right.
saying, oh yes, AI, it's this thing. Let's plug it in. You know,
Right.
we've got to figure out the right experiences to bring.
Right. Got it. Malcolm?
So yeah, so I agree because I think there's actually a lot of confusion, amongst our clients of what AI is about. They thought AI is about buying some IBM Watsons, for example, or they thought it's about buying some AI services from Amazon, right? But no, it's not, right? Right? You got to think from a customer's perspective, right? What problems are you want to solve? What experience you want to deliver to people, right? And you look at what you have in an enterprise,
Right.
right? And that includes, as I say, your people, your process,
Right.
your data, and then you say, okay, then there's these wonderful things on AI where there's a virtual agent,
Right.
or there's some learning, machine learning capability, and so forth. And you bring this together, right? But it's actually a journey, right? Because you can't jump to AI without having the data,
Right.
right? And without some of this, digital DNA sorted out in your organization. So our advice to client is we've got to look at this holistically, start small, right? And then to be able to scale up gradually.
Got it. Thanks, Malcolm. So we have about a couple of minutes left. I just want to wrap it up. So kind of guidance, good. For us normal people, right? Not the big enterprises. What's your guidance on this? I mean, you're a lead innovator. You know a lot of stuff about this area. What's your guidance for us normal folks in this area?
Well, I think first I would say that we need to be both careful but also curious. So we should not go and say, okay, there's going to be all these problems and I want to get involved.
Right.
But at the same time, we shouldn't just do anything just because we can.
Right.
I think most importantly, I think people are realizing how unique people are and
Right.
how unique humans are.
Right.
We should not use technology to make that smaller, but to make it bigger. And so it's basically a mixed approach of being precautionary and proactive.
Right.
Because this is also a technology that could change our world entirely,
Right.
not in the next 5 years, but in
Right.
20 years.
Right.
And we'll probably need to change our entire structure of how we work and how we collaborate because of this technology.
Right.
And think about, I think the crucial thing is really about getting politicians and people to understand what that means for society.
Right.
I think it's mostly good, but it could have many side effects that we need to address.
Totally agree. Malcolm, Justin. So what I heard from both of you is basically what Accenture brings to the table is you actually pry open the black box and provides the transparency, provides enterprises to understand what AI is about and how it actually help them solve their problem. And that's what the best business value you guys made up. Any other comments that you can provide as we wrap this up?
Sure. So, for example, like we think about helping our clients move along kind of this a path of innovation.
Right.
And so, I think a lot of times it's one of the AI is now getting to be used just as much as this innovation word.
Right.
Like, what do they even mean, and how does
Right.
anyone kind of define that? So, to me, innovation is like change that adds value.
Right.
So, any change that adds value, it could be something simple. Like one of my favorite old school examples of this is Starbucks used to have an ideas platform. Anybody could just put some ideas in. I think a woman from like Wisconsin or somewhere in Missouri, I can't remember exactly where, one day said, I love your iced coffees, but by the time I get to the bottom of the iced coffee, it's just water. So why don't you just make ice cubes out of coffee?
Right.
What a great, simple example, great
Right.
innovation. They've rolled that out globally, and so the iced coffees are better now.
Right.
So it could be something really simple like that,
Right.
or it could be using artificial intelligence to help solve, world problems.
Right.
One of the things that we're involved with right now is using AI to help classify all of the coral and fish that are living on reefs around
Wow.
the world. So we're using an AI image recognition system to go and classify these things so we can actually keep track of what's happening with that, participating in a number of global projects. There's one called 50 Reefs, which is looking to help keep the 50 reefs that are most resilient to ocean acidification and
Right.
climate change, temperature raise, and we're helping them actually do this kind of classification so that when they go back, they can see whether fish populations or coral have increased or decreased in population. And if you're using AI to do this, it's like 900 times faster
Right.
than having research students at the university going through every single picture. We're talking hundreds of thousands of
Right.
pictures around the world.
Right.
So using AI to benefit is a great thing,
Right.
but I totally agree with you as well. We've got to be very careful about how these things are deployed, both to consumers and to enterprise.
Right. Thank you, Justin. Malcolm, final words?
Yeah, so maybe I think just made one point, right? Because we're getting into a territory that we could be entering into this general learning one day, right? And this is, I would say, it's both opportunity, but it's also quite dangerous. So for companies like Accenture, we got to be very responsible in terms of solution that we're recommending to our client. The ability for the machine to learn. I got to operate within this ethical boundary, right? So in Accenture, we call this the responsible AI, right? If we don't have that and just go along with the maximum power,
Right.
full throttle of AI, I think we could be getting a territory that we could be doing unethical things
Or
with
backlash.
our client. A
Right.
backlash,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
We're responsible
Right.
is actually quite important, even more important than before
Right.
for firms like Accenture.
Right. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today. I would like to thank Malcolm, Justin, and Gertz to be on this discussion panel. Great insights, and thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.